Hi, in this video we're going to be looking at applying a text shadow in such a way that it creates an inset looking effect for the text that we apply it to. So something like this, where we have a headline on a page and the text looks slightly sunken into the page rather than giving it a 3D effect, which is what we'd traditionally expect from the text shadow property. We're going to be doing this in such a way that we can reuse the style anywhere on the site nice and easily just by using a span and a class on that span. So let's start writing some code. What we'll need first of all is an HTML template looking something like this, and crucially we'll have a link to a style sheet, which is where we're going to obviously put our text shadow property and use that. And the style sheet here is just in the same directory as the HTML file. So let's start doing some markup. We'll need a div with a class of container just to allow us to put all the code we'll need for the headline itself inside this and give that a bit of formatting. So there we are. That's the first thing we'll need. Then inside this container we'll just have our h1, which is going to be the title of the page, but you can have any element there, so a p tag or so on, and apply the style to the p tag. Then we'll need some text, so the dark night. Then we'll need some text, so the dark night rises will do nicely. Finally we'll apply the span tag around this text, and basically we'll add the class to the span tag, a class of Inset shadow, and that's what we'll target and apply the shadow to, and this will allow us to reuse the shadow wherever we really want to. So for example, if I was to take rises out of there and put it here, then the shadow would only be applied to the dark night and not to the word rises. So let's go back to this and see what we get on the page with that. At the moment it's just a basic bit of HTML with no styling. So let's apply some styles. So the first thing I'm going to do is just give the background a colour, which is going to be just a grey colour. Then I'm going to remove any default styling, any default margin from the page. And then I'm going to start styling up the title itself. Give it a font size 5 EM, give it a font family of Georgia, and that's all the styling needed for the H1. And then finally I'm just going to give the container a bit of padding just to get the headline away from the edge of the page a little bit. So there we go, see that again, and there we are. We've got our title in the middle but no shadow applied to it just yet. So let's create the shadow. So we'll select the span tag using so we'll select the span tag with the class of Inset shadow using this selector here. And then the first thing we'll need, which is crucial, is we're going to give the text a color of transparent. And what this means is that we won't actually see any of the text, we'll only see the shadows. And the reason this works is because transparent is equivalent to having an RGBA color where the alpha value is set to 0. So we literally just see straight through the text itself as though it isn't there. And then we'll need some text shadows. Now we need 2 text shadows, and you can use 2 text shadows by comma separating text shadows in the selector. So the first one we'll need is a white text shadow with a slight offset. So I'm going to have a Y offset of 1, X offset of 1, a blur radius of 2 pixels, and then the color is going to be RGBA 255, 255, 255, and then an opacity of 0.6. So it's going to be white, but we can see through it slightly. And then the next thing we'll need is, actually before I do that, let's save this and see what it looks like on the page. Here we can see what we have, and it's just a bit of a blur at the moment and doesn't quite look like what we want at all. So the crucial thing to do now is to apply a black box shadow. Sorry, the crucial thing to do now is apply a black text shadow. And we're not going to give the black text shadow an offset at all, it's going to render exactly where the color would render. And the reason we're doing this is so that we can see a very slight amount of the black text shadow and then all of the white text shadow, and that'll allow us to create the effect that we're going for. So to summarize, before I show this on the page, we have a color of transparent, which means we don't see the text itself at all, we only see the shadows. We have a white shadow that is slightly see-through, so that we can see some of the background through the shadow, and behind that shadow we have a black shadow, which is just a solid shadow. So let's save that, go to the page, refresh, and there we are, we have our effect just like what we wanted. The final thing I'm going to do is remove rises from that span tag, paste it outside, and then go back to the page just to show that the shadow is only going to be applied to the bit inside the span tag.